Hi there, my name is Tom Bell, and welcome to my 5 Minute Friday videocast on the 7th of November. I'm an author, a frustrated justice seeker, former NHS whistleblower, and now a full-time PhD student. A couple of things have caught my attention this week. One is people, I was going to say escaping from prison, but they haven't really escaped, have they? They've kind of been allowed to walk out the doors, which is almost amusing if it wasn't so sad. And the other thing is the report into the high streets, which talks about a lot of the shops being used to employ illegal immigrants and as fronts for money laundering, etc., and for the sale of illegal goods. And I kind of the question that keeps coming back to me, and I'm kind of biased in this respect because I've had lots of experience working with and working around public services and been failed on most occasions by public services. I think we are constantly disappointed with them. We don't have expectations about public services anymore, do we? Let's be honest. We just expect them to. I don't know. We don't even expect them to reply to letters, do we? How do you make public services better? Because I think, in summary, if you're going to look at the public sector in this country right now, whether it's your local authority, which is bumbling along, overspending, generally doing a rubbishy job, whether it's the NHS on its knees, whether it's the stretched police service, arresting all the wrong people and not doing the basic stuff we need them to do, whether it's a Crown prosecution service, whoever it is, it's failing, isn't it? It feels broken. Stuff feels broken. And I think it's reinforced when you sort of see these basic things happening on the high street and you've got people being let out of prison cells and being let out of confinement kind of almost because somebody just left the door open or decided that, I don't know, whatever it was they decided to do or not to do. How do you make the public sector better? That's the question, isn't it? We'll want a better public sector, I think. The privateers amongst you, of course, will want a private public sector. You won't want a public sector, but you can have that debate somewhere else. That's fine. We know that competition drives innovation and improvement. Yeah, that's a fact. I was a chartered marketer for 20 years. I've been around enough private businesses to know that. Those forces, of course, are absent in the public sector. But we also know that privatising public services where there's a monopoly on provision, that doesn't work because, we've got utilities and we've got failing rail services and that, again, more stuff, I'm not going to use them. Yeah, I was just about to use the phrase broken Britain, which means I'm going to use the phrase broken Britain. I don't think it's completely broken. I don't think we're completely broken as a people. But it feels as if everything's kind of just a bit on its knees, a bit rubbishy, if you like. So how do you make it better without privatising it and without the forces of competition? I really don't know the answer to that. Is it a mindset, you think? Is there a public service management mindset which just accepts things the way they are and feels entitled to a good salary and a fat pension and an early retirement age? When I look at the jobs I've had in the past and the jobs many of my family and friends have had in the past, working for small family-owned firms with sometimes I remember working without a pension scheme at all, and I think that's the case for many. It has been the case for many people for many years. How the turkeys won't vote for Christmas, will they? So if you look at the issue with the high streets, by the way, this money laundering and the employment of illegal immigrants working behind shop stalls, selling vapes and all the rest of that stuff and selling illegal goods, duty-free tobacco, etc. Who can blame them for that? That's a result, isn't it, of trading standards being taken away from local authorities. We used to have, certainly in Cumbria, we used to have a trading standards department with at least a dozen employees in it. There were people who could visit premises, people who would visit the high street, and shops were regularly checked to make sure everything was hunky-dory. You couldn't call that a little bit of interference and bureaucracy, but actually you can see now that without it, things are failing. But of course, local authority restructure still happened. The idea was to save money. But if you say to the people at the top of an organisation, how can you save money? They never say, oh, please sack me, do they? They always kind of get rid of the people who are actually adding the value and doing the jobs, don't they? So the trading standards teams went. The prison service is clearly in a mess. Perhaps that's to do with privatisation. I don't know. But it seems there's no penalties for getting it right and there's no penalties for getting it wrong in the public sector, are there? So how do you actually get people to get on top of their jobs? I mean, my 90-year-old mum, she was sent a tax demand a couple of years ago by the HMRC. It was absolutely irrelevant to her. It was nothing to do with her. I was asked by the chair of NHS England to send them an email on an email address that had been defunct for over a year. The Crown Prosecution Service sent me a letter which referenced the wrong police force, but they told me, of course, that they'd spent lots of time considering my case. It's as if we kind of we don't expect good things from the public sector anymore, do we? I mean, God love the NHS. It's the only thing that seems to be standing roughly upright at the moment. It's there when we need it, but it relies on the goodwill of its staff, you know. I don't think it relies on the goodwill of managers, by the way. I don't think that's present, but it relies on the goodwill of its staff, the people who actually add the value and do the jobs at the front end. Yeah, no conclusions here, but hey, you know, questions are as good as answers, aren't they? I think that's true. On that note, stay safe, stay solvent if you can, and even harder, try and stay sane. Have a good weekend. Ciao.